Ryan Sprague is a young UFO journalist and contributing writer for Open Minds magazine. We'll talk with Ryan about interesting computer hacking cases where hackers specifically sought information relating to UFOs. Maureen and I will also tell you about a study looking for signs of extraterrestrial life on Martian moons, a curious alleged alien skeleton, and other space and UFO news right now on Spacing Out. Greetings everyone and welcome to Spacing Out. I'm Jason McClellan.
And I'm Maureen Ellsbury. Our guest on the show today is UFO journalist Ryan Sprague. We'll discuss some interesting UFO related topics with him during our interview.
That's coming up later in the show, but now it's time for UFO news.
The new television series Chasing UFOs debuted on the National Geographic Channel last week on June 29th. To aid in their marketing efforts to promote the show, the network released poll data about America's thoughts related to UFOs.
Nat Geo's Senior Vice President of Research and Digital Media, Brad Dancer, told USA Today, "We wanted to get a sense of how Americans view UFOs, what people believe, and how mainstream pop culture may or may not be playing into their opinions on it."
Poll results indicate that more than a third of U.S. participants believe UFOs exist. Disturbingly, however, 2% of poll participants indicated that they would inflict bodily harm upon encountering an extraterrestrial. Another really interesting result from the poll indicates that the majority of Americans would rather have President Obama to handle an alien invasion than Mitt Romney. So
That's interesting. Yeah, there was a lot of focus on that. And more results from the poll can be seen at USA Today's website, as well as other media outlets. Everybody seemed to cover this story.
Yeah.
But a lot of the attention was on the Romney versus
Just the president
Obama.
thing.
Yeah, the president thing. And that's also interesting because in the field of UFO research, a lot of researchers felt going into the last presidential election that Barack Obama might be the disclosure president, the president who would finally announce to the world that, hey, there are extraterrestrials, we've known about it all along. You know, I certainly don't believe that's ever going to happen from a president, but regardless, you know, people thought that Obama was going to be that president.
Correct. That day came and passed, though.
Came and passed, and a very strong advocate of that thought was Steve Bassett from the Paradigm Research Group.
Correct.
And to this day, he still has a counter on his website that says days since President Obama took office without disclosure. And it's like now at 1,200 or whatever it is. But still ticking.
I think people, when they see this question, probably think a lot of Independence Day, like the movie, and about how the president handled it in the movie.
Sure.
And it's a lot of not based in reality sort of information.
But with the other data from this poll, you know, it mirrors a lot of other polls that we see coming out. And every time one of these polls comes out, they get a lot of press. A lot of people a lot of outlets pick up on the polls and think that this is some new earth-shattering information when, you know, poll after poll shows that the majority of Americans have an interest in this topic. They believe that extraterrestrials exist. Something that is a pet peeve of mine in these polls is the wording that they choose to use with a lot of these polls, asking about the belief in UFOs, saying, do you believe in UFOs, or do you believe UFOs exist? And while I think most people understand what they're trying to get at with that question, the real question is, do you believe that UFOs or some UFOs are extraterrestrial in origin? Because unidentified objects in the sky exist, and if you don't think that, or if you think you know what everything in the sky is, you're a moron. So the wording is flawed on that anyway. But a lot of these polls also make it difficult to get accurate results because they'll ask a question and then the very next question contradicts the first question. Or you want to say yes to both, but it doesn't give you that option. You get to choose one out of 4 questions.
And who knows what their polling pool is and how selective their demographic was, because you can get a lot of bias.
Absolutely, and because this was all fueled by Nat Geo to promote the show Chasing UFOs, it's likely geared largely towards people who are already interested in UFOs. So it's not a good cross-section.
But there was a huge percentage that just said they weren't sure.
Right. Yeah.
I don't know.
But another poll, and it was interesting to see how much coverage it got and how many media outlets around the world chose to write about these results, especially the president result.
Very cool. On July 1st, Vision Wine and Spirits announced the release of Abduction Wine. And this new concept brand the company is calling Out of This World.
Abduction Wine is the concept of Rob Jacobs, a science fiction enthusiast and a firm believer in extraterrestrial life. And as the Nat Geographic poll we just mentioned indicates, he's not alone in his beliefs.
At the time of its launch, the line consists of 2 wines, Galactic White, which is made from 100% Iren grapes, and Cosmic Red, which is a blend of Merlot and Cabernet Sauvignon.
That one sounds good to me. I like the red
Delicious.
idea. Yeah. Well, according to the company's press release, quote, the eye-popping labels feature an extraterrestrial character that is a rendering of the depiction given by many Earthlings who have claimed to have seen Martians or other beings.
You can find out more about Abduction Wine at abductionwine.com.
We've been hearing about this company for a while. Yeah, for about a year now as they've been ramping up. And now apparently they've officially launched. And we're waiting for our samples because supposedly we'll be getting samples soon. So we'll be sure to let you know what we think of Abduction Wine.
Definitely. We just won't drink it on the show.
Maybe we will.
Skeletal remains discovered in Peru in late 2011 garnered attention when supposedly noted yet unnamed scientists from Spain and Russia reached the incredible conclusion that the skeleton was that of an extraterrestrial being. But as Gather reporter Tom Rose reports, the skeleton was recently made available for serious and extensive study to international scientists for the first time.
The supposed alien remains were discovered by Peruvian anthropologist Renato Davila Riquelme, who is affiliated with the museum in Cusco, Peru. But it is American scientist Brian Forster, assistant director at the Paracas History Museum near Lima, Peru, who is reportedly behind the study.
The skeleton is thought to be that of an infant, and it has 11 ribs rather than the normal human number of 12. In addition to its unusually elongated skull, the skeleton has an inordinately thickened neck and spinal column. Although elongating skulls was common in some ancient cultures, Rose points out that no baby skeleton has ever been found, which shows this kind of development at such an early age.
Forster is coordinating further studies, and top scientists from around the world are reportedly going to, quote, converge in Paracas to study the remains, test the DNA, and publish their findings later this year. I'm curious about this story. I remember when we initially reported the 2011 findings, and it was very mysterious and a lot of red flags there because these scientists, supposedly noted scientists, were coming out and saying, this isn't extraterrestrial. But we had no idea who those scientists were.
And this is also coming from a region where this elongating of the heads is a common practice.
Right.
And I know that currently the supposed extraterrestrial being is in a museum down there, which has a lot of other skeletal remains with the elongated heads. And I believe actually in the same case as the infant is what they believe to be a fetus, also with some sort of elongation of the head. So, I mean, that's very interesting because, like they said, it seems to be a very young age to see any sort of development like this, but
yeah, it's the issue with the elongation of the skull, but also with the development of the body. It's still small, but there's still development there that indicates that it's kind of out of the ordinary.
Right.
So it's mysterious, but even back in 2011, there was speculation that there could be some sort of physical deformity or something else playing a part here that could explain, but hopefully these tests will provide additional information.
Yeah, and I'm not going to jump to any conclusions until I see some sort of DNA test results.
Absolutely, but I mean, it's still interesting to look at. It's bizarre to see this thing, but you make a great point. I mean, the elongation of skulls has happened and continues to happen in certain cultures. So until further tests can confirm something out of the ordinary, right now, it's just a normal skeleton.
Well, and I think that, testing is going to take quite a while, unfortunately. So we might have to wait a while to hear any exciting news regarding this crazy baby.
Most likely, and testing does take money, so hopefully he has funding, or
yeah, that's
we'll see what happens, but we will definitely stay on top of that story. In space news this week, astronomers Aviv Ophir and Stefan Dreisler, both members of the International Astronomical Union, recently conducted an independent analysis of 64 stellar systems from data collected by NASA's Kepler Space Telescope.
The team located 84 new exoplanet candidates, which brings the total number of potential planets discovered by Kepler to 2,405. According to preliminary assessments of the team's results by the Planetary Habitability Laboratory at the University of Puerto Rico and Arecibo, 5 of the new candidates are located in the habitable zone of the parent stars.
Only 2 of the 5 can be considered potentially habitable, but the Planetary Habitability Laboratory explains that these aren't the best candidates for potential habitable planets because they are both very close to their upper size limit for terrestrial planets. However, they explain without mass information, not much more can be said about their composition and habitability. So again, this is limited data that's coming back from Kepler, so they're making their best assessments right now, but you know, that's all we have to go on. There's a lot of guessing that takes place.
I think the key point here is the sheer number of planets that Kepler has so far discovered. It's so extensive, and there's so much more research that needs to be done. And they all are showing up here in the habitable zone. So that's potential for water existing on a lot of these planets, or the possibility they could.
And this is another example of just the volume of data that's coming in from all of these different research projects right now. We talked about this so many times about all of the data coming in from Kepler, and there's a finite number of people to process this information, and that's why some researchers with different projects have suggested to utilize the public astronomers to come in and help process and sift through all of this data, because there's just so much that comes in. And it gets processed by humans, not computers. So, some of this information, I mean, it takes a long time to come back from Kepler too. And Kepler was launched in 2009, and just last year they started getting data back. But it takes a lot of time to go through all of this data and actually figure out what the data is telling us.
Well, and it'd be great to be able to, further the speed of getting through this data, maybe by utilizing all the different space schools and upper grad students. That could be a good project for them.
Yeah, definitely. I think crowdsourcing a lot of this would be a terrific way to go. And I think more and more people, because it's such an exciting time with space exploration, I think you're going to see more of that. I think people are going to get re-energized with this interest in space and searching for extraterrestrial life, that they will be able to get those people interested in participating in processing data.
Researchers at MIT recently determined that during the winter on Mars, clouds of snow blanket the red planet's poles.
But unlike the water-based snow here on Earth, the snowy particles on Mars are frozen crystals of carbon dioxide. The MIT News explains that most of the Martian atmosphere is composed of carbon dioxide, and in the winter, the poles get so cold enough to freeze alcohol, that the gas condenses, forming tiny particles of snow.
And particles of snow are so small there that they likely more resemble fog than snow on Earth.
That's so cool.
And this is actually not the first time that snow has been discovered on Mars.
That's right.
In 2008, the Phoenix Mars lander actually discovered falling snow. And this is the same time that they discovered traces of carbonite on Mars.
So many interesting discoveries. Again, I mean, Mars is something that's, relatively close to us. And like we mentioned with Kepler, we're discovering all this stuff that's so far away from us. But Mars is right here, and it seems that every week they're discovering something new about Mars.
Well, and I think probably the more interesting part of this story in relation to this previous discovery of snow was that now, before they weren't sure if the snow was able to actually make it to the surface, because they found it falling more in the upper atmosphere of Mars. But this is more concrete evidence that it's actually reaching the ground.
Yeah, it's really exciting. I love these discoveries about Mars, and again, more indication of, there's this thought that Mars, is very similar to Earth, similar size, and the discoveries of water on Mars and snow, and there've been a lot of pictures posted lately of dust devils on Mars, and just these familiar
really
things
cool.
to us on Earth we're finding on Mars as well, in different forms, but they exist.
I think it's only a matter of time till we start getting some very significant data from Mars that's going to kind of blow our minds.
Well, with more and more groups ramping up to do manned missions to Mars, I think that will really
Or you can get our Mars colonists
Our
that
Mars
might be
colony.
headed there
Yeah.
in 2023, I believe it
Yeah,
was.
I'm not holding my breath for those
No.
guys, but we do have Curiosity arriving in
That's true.
August.
And that's exciting. I think we're going to get a lot of really
Yeah.
great data back from Curiosity.
I do too. The moons of Mars could provide evidence of life on the red planet. That's according to Purdue University professor Dr. Jay Milosh.
A press release published on June 28th details Milosh's theory that a mission to a Martian moon could return with alien life. He explains that if life ever existed on Mars, or even if it exists today, the moons of Mars would most certainly contain Martian material delivered by debris from large asteroid impacts. And as IO9.com explains, of the 2 Martian moons, Phobos is especially likely to contain these Martian particles.
Milosh led a team chosen by NASA's Planetary Protection Office to determine if samples from Phobos contained enough material from Mars to include viable Martian organisms. Team member Loic Chapez expounded, "It is estimated that during the past 10 million years, there have been at least 4 large impact events powerful enough to launch material into space, and we focused on several large craters as possible points of origin. It turns out that no matter where Phobos is in its orbit, it would have captured material from these powerful impact events."
The researchers concluded that a 200-gram sample scooped from the surface of Phobos could contain, on average, about 1/10 of a milligram of Mars surface material launched in the past 10 million years, and 50 billion individual particles from Mars. The same sample could contain as much as 50 milligrams of Mars surface material from the past 3.5 billion years.
Special attention is paid to timeframes because, as team member Professor Kathleen Howell explains, it is thought that after 10 million years of exposure to the high levels of radiation on Phobos, any biologically active material would be destroyed. Howell added, "Even if we found no evidence of life in a sample from Phobos, it would not be a definitive answer to the question of whether or not there was life on Mars. There still may have been life that existed too long ago for us to detect it."
As NASA reformulates the Mars exploration program, a future mission to Phobos is a possibility. The team findings were presented at a joint NASA-European Space Agency meeting in Austria. And this is interesting, again, because then you're going sort of like in this carbon dating thing via asteroid impact craters.
Right.
That, like she said, if that we test this and there's nothing there doesn't mean that it's not a possibility. And I'd like to know, I mean, when each impact crater was that they were speaking of, in order to date whether that could mean life is currently.
Right. And yeah, the time frame matters so much, but yeah, she makes a great point that this is just one indicator. And fitting within that perfect time frame too, just one indicator. So whether or not the test comes back and says, yes, we found something, or no, we didn't find something, that's not a definitive answer. But this is another cool study where we're looking at Mars. I mean, I can't stop getting excited about Mars. I need to calm down about Mars.
Mars
But I love this idea of looking at moons now. And we've seen moons come up as some of the most likely places for extraterrestrial life. And now we're talking about the Martian moons. That's pretty exciting.
Yeah, definitely.
Now let's talk with our guest today, Ryan Sprague.
Well, we are happy to be joined by our friend, UFO journalist Ryan Sprague today. Ryan, how you doing?
Good, guys. How are you?
Fantastic. Thanks for joining us today. Well,
Yeah, my pleasure.
you have been a contributing writer in Open Minds magazine for a while now, and I've got to say, as an editor of the magazine, I always look forward to reading your articles. I enjoy your perspective, and as I'm sure you've noticed, you are among one of the very few younger people in the field.
Yeah, I guess I'm honored. I love it. I love it. I love being amongst the older researchers. I personally have learned a lot through them, some in specific. Peter Robbins is one of my favorites and really got me into the field, I would say. So,
Well,
yeah.
and something that I certainly sense reading your articles is you definitely have enthusiasm when you write about this field, and that's something that, unfortunately, I think is lacking in some of the older researchers in the field, just because they've been doing it for so long. I think some of that enthusiasm has gone, but I definitely sense that in your writing. So congratulations on that.
I appreciate that. Thank you.
Well, in the upcoming issue of Open Minds magazine,
Yeah,
you wrote an
the old
article. In the upcoming issue, you wrote an article about UFO hackers Now, some people may be familiar or be aware that there have been these people who have hacked specifically looking for information about UFOs. And in my opinion, and probably others, the most well-known of those would be the case of Gary Mckinnon. And if you wouldn't mind, Ryan, could you give us a brief overview of the Gary Mckinnon case?
Sure. Gary McKinnon case really came to light, I'd say, around 2002. Um, that's when it became pretty relevant in the media, the mass media. Gary McKinnon was accused of hacking into, I believe it was over almost 100 different military and NASA computers. Um, he was just a guy looking for information, UFOs, anti-gravity propulsion, just the everyday stuff we're all interested in, right? So yeah, he was caught in what he was doing, as most of these hackers are. They can sometimes be rather arrogant people, and yeah, he was boasting on a few websites about what he was doing, what he had found, and eventually they nabbed him, and now he is suffering at the hands of possible extradition to the United States from Britain. Um, and at this point, it's still in a legal limbo between President Obama and Prime Minister David Cameron.
Yeah, this has been going on for 10
Years.
plus years. It's been
Almost
going
a
on and
decade.
on and on, this
The
whole extradition
Free
proceeding.
Gary campaign.
Yeah, for
Exactly.
sure. His
Free
mom has
Gary.
been very supportive and really pushing
Mhm,
to fight the extradition. And
mhm.
this case is fascinating because it's been referred to as the largest military hack of all time.
Exactly.
And some of the computers that he hacked into are NASA computers.
Mhm.
And you know, this hack pointed out so many security flaws they had in their computer systems. And since then, there have been so many other hacks into NASA computers. So
There
I
have
like to
been.
But
point out they really didn't seem to learn their lesson.
I
yeah,
would say not. I mean, when you have your password literally be password, there's a problem.
right. And in your article, you covered there was actually someone else that hacked into a NASA computer prior to Gary McKinnon. I believe his last name's Bevan. What can you
That's
tell us
correct.
about that case?
Sure, yeah. It happened a little over a decade before McKinnon. I guess you could call him a predecessor in a way. Matthew Bevan, also of British descent. He was a rather antisocial kid, sort of looking for a community to fit into, and he found the world of hacking, which was a little bit more, popular back in the early mid '90s. And he wasn't necessarily looking for UFO information, but I think that's what he had tripped upon, and it really intrigued him. So he just dug deeper and deeper and deeper. He was able to hack into Wright-Patterson Air Force Base, which we all know is supposedly where the Roswell wreckage was housed for a short period of time. Uh, Goddard Space Station was another one of his big hacks. Griffiths Air Force Base as well. So yeah, he was definitely a predecessor of McKinnon, and there's a few others as well, but I would say Matthew Bevan was one of the best at
Well, we
the
won't have
time.
you go into too much detail because we want people to read your article. But yeah, people, you should check out Ryan's article. Like I said, it's going to be in the August-September issue of Open Minds magazine that hits shelves
July 17th.
July 17th. So look for that. And as I mentioned at the beginning of the interview, Ryan, you are one of the younger researchers in the field. And I know you've written about this topic before, about younger researchers and more importantly, the use of social media now in the research of UFOs and extraterrestrials. Would you mind commenting about that, about the use of social media and how you see that affecting, either positively or negatively, the research in this field?
Of course, yeah. I mean, without social media, I would say that I wouldn't be where I am today in my investigative journalism and my research. I was able to seek out open minds through Facebook, through through websites, through forums, and that's what really got me into this whole this whole world of investigative journalism. I submitted an article to Open Minds, and they were extremely nice enough to publish my first article, and I've sort of been running with that ever since. It's its own community, just like anything else. And even the old guard, as we spoke of earlier, the older researchers are starting to become more akin to that, and it's great. It's great to see some of them on Facebook, and just stepping out of that comfort zone of the stuffy lectures and the books and all that. I mean, obviously, that's what all gets us into this. If you hadn't had a sighting yourself, and I think it's great. I would not have been able to meet many of these researchers and share topics and research and information without it. So that's sort of the way the world is going, and as the younger generation, we're just sort of running with it.
Do you think, I mean, obviously, I mean, the three of us are all quite young in this field, but do you think that it's a general disinterest in the younger generations, or we're just seeing a different form of interest in the way people are approaching the UFO subject?
Um, I think it's a little of both. I do think in today's technologically driven world, there's a bombardment of distractions for the younger generation. To get them to look up into the sky is a very rare thing these days. But on the other hand, I do think that they are interested. I just don't think they know where to turn, where to go. And with all these streaming videos and YouTube and everything these days, hoaxes have become a lot more prevalent, and that is a deterrent from the hard science and the hard research that we're trying to be perceived as. So,
And I know that's a question that you're approached with a lot. I know we are too, with some of the older researchers posing the question of how to get more young people involved, how to get more young people interested in this topic. And I think more times than not, this question comes at UFO conferences and wondering how to get more young people to attend these conferences. And my response to that is I'm not sure that's a battle that can be won. As you mentioned, with the short attention spans and just the overwhelming amount of content and everything coming from all angles. I think a lot of the younger generations aren't the type of people who want to go and sit at a conference and listen to people give hour-and-a-half presentations.
I mean, I would have to agree. When you have commercials now on television being 15 seconds long, like it's a problem. It really is. But I think we're headed in a direction where that integrated media is going to help. I think it's just getting them interested. I believe it was in one of my previous articles about the youth of today. Nick Redfern, the researcher, he said that you can't force this on anyone. You can't force this on the younger generation. If they're not interested, they're not interested. It takes something special, I think, for someone to be interested in this topic, this crazy, kooky sort of that we all seem to live in. But I do think there are younger researchers out there. You have Micah Hanks, you have John Greenwald with the Black Vault. They're out there. I think it's just a matter of bringing them to the forefront and showing people that there is a younger generation interested in this, and it can be a cool thing. It really can.
I think the Nick Redfern point is a very important one, and I think some people lose sight of this. This is certainly an important topic, and there is a lot of evidence pointing to the reality of extraterrestrials and extraterrestrial UFOs.
Exactly.
But I think some people approach this more as a religion, or because of their own uncertainties, they want to force the ideas on other people and get more people supporting their belief, because that affirms, what they've been going after all along. But it doesn't benefit anybody and doesn't help discover any information by just forcing beliefs on people. It's not a religion, it's not a cult. It should be approached as science and looking for that evidence. And whether someone wants to believe it or not, that's up to them.
It is. It's free will, and we choose our own battles. And yeah, I think you're right. I think the hard science is what the younger generation needs to be looking at. And with all these new planets being discovered, and every day it's something new. There's a new discovery. There's Earth-based planets. There's water on Mars. It's something new every day, and it's exciting. It is an extremely exciting time to live in, and I think we're very fortunate to be at the age that we are right now to continue our research into that. And I do believe that this is a paradigm shift. It's 2012. We all know everything that goes with that, all the baggage as well. But it's a time for enlightenment, and I think that it's our time.
You're right, man. It is really exciting time, and I don't know. Perhaps there isn't a lack of interest right now. I think there's plenty of interest. I think the majority of the people on this planet have an interest in these subjects. So that might not be the right way to phrase it, but perhaps it's having so much of an interest that people want to go out and actively research. I think that's where there's currently the lack. I think the interest is there, but not the interest and the drive to do actual investigation.
Well, even
exactly. It's the field work that matters.
Even space.com just released a survey yesterday that I found interesting, because 92% of the respondents think there's life out there.
That's amazing.
I mean, that's a huge percentage.
Exactly.
Again, to the comment that perhaps people are just lazy and they've got all this information. I think they see, even if they saw on their Facebook or whatever that aliens are at the White House right now, I think they'd go, oh, cool, and they'd click on like or click on share, and they'd move on.
What's for dinner? Yeah, I agree. It would take UFO landing on the White House lawn, I think, for people to really look at it. And I think you're right. People aren't going out there and doing the research, and that's what's most important. With the saturation of the media and the internet these days, you have no idea where the sources are coming from. So I think that's very important, and that's something we should keep with the old guard of ufology, for sure.
Fantastic points. Ryan, we are out of time, but thank you so much for joining us today. Love chatting with you, and again, congratulations on the work you do. I really appreciate reading your journalism, and I think what you do is very important to the future of the field of researching UFOs and extraterrestrials. So again, thank you.
Thank you, guys. Anytime.
All right. We'll talk to you soon.
Take care.
Take care.
On this show, we like to highlight upcoming events we think you'll be interested in, like these. A seminar entitled The Kepler Mission, Zeroing In on Habitable Earths, will take place on July 11th in Mountain View, California, presented by Doug Cadwell as part of the SETI Institute's weekly seminars. The seminar will take place at noon and is free of charge. Sign up at www.seti.org/talks. The Space Frontier Foundation New Space 2012 conference will take place in California from July 26th to the 28th at the Hyatt Regency Santa Clara, California location. Discussions will include panels about space commercialization and habitation. Register at newspace.spacefrontier.org. The 2012 Kecksburg Ufo Festival celebrates the 47th anniversary of the Kecksburg UFO incident. The event will take place July 28th and 29th. The conference features a parade, speakers, vendors, and more. Admission is free, but donations are suggested. Find out more at kecksburgvfd.com.
That's all for this episode of Spacing Out. Be sure to visit openminds.tv for all the latest news. And join us again next week for another show.
Thanks for joining us. Remember, we do welcome your submissions. If you'd like to share anything with us, you can always email us at contact@openminds.tv. I'm Maureen Ellsbury.
And I'm Jason McClellan. We will see you in the future.